So I know everyone's kind of still freaking out over the fact that there's reprints happening for Attack on Titans, and everyone's wondering like, oh my god, is it gonna be the same? Is it gonna be different?
Oh my god! Oh Jesus!
But I just want to bring something a little bit more interesting to the table just to show that just because it says the specifications are going to be the same, meaning it might probably have the same signature, it doesn't always mean that there's no difference at all between the cards. So the example that I actually have here is Fate Zero. Fate Zero released in 2013 in Weiss Schwarz, and in 2015 when Unlimited Blade Works was released, they actually reprinted Fate Zero in 2015, and despite the fact that the gold signatures were actually exactly the same, the foiling pattern, if you look closely, is actually different. And I just so happen to have an example of this, and I'm going to show you. And unless you had these cards side by side, you actually wouldn't really even ever notice that there's a difference between the reprint. So on the left here, I actually have the original one, and on the right is actually the reprint version. So I'll try to get it into like different lighting, and then you'll actually kind of see that with the reprint one, you'll see that the foiling, the line is actually a lot thicker, where you see these like, you know, thick bars on thick bars on the actual foiling on this Gilgamesh card. And then on the other one, you see how the foiling is actually a lot more intricate as opposed to this one. So once you kind of have them side by side, you'll see the difference on it. And I'm going to show you this same example on another card as well. So I don't have multiple versions of these cards, but they have the same type of foiling pattern on this Rider and Lancer. And if you actually look at it, you'll actually notice the difference right away. On the original Fate Zero prints, before the reprint, you'll see that there's this like vertical line pattern to it. So there's like a pattern that actually circles the character, but you'll see that there's like a up and down vertical line pattern, right? Whereas on the Rider, you'll see that it has this like wavy, kind of like fingerprintish type of pattern on there. So again, you'll see that it does have the fingerprintish pattern, but it also has this vertical line to it. Whereas on the Rider, you actually don't have the vertical line, and it just has that fingerprint pattern on there. And I'm going to show you the same thing on this Saber card, where you'll see similar to how the patterns on the Archer on the reprint is a lot thicker, right? So that's the thicker one. And on the original one, you have like closer lines on the foiling. And then you look at the Saber. I don't have an additional copy of it, but if you were to look at a reprint as opposed to the original copy has these lines that are much more closer together, and that's how you'll be able to tell the difference between that and a reprint. I don't believe Unlimited Blade Works was ever reprinted, but I would assume if you had an Archer card and the pattern was up and down and very close together like this, if they were to ever reprint it, or if they reprint it, then they would have like thicker patterns on the foiling as well too. But these are just examples as to how you could have cards that do reprint, they still have the silver signatures, but at the end of the day, you could still have a difference between these signature cards. So it doesn't mean like, oh, you know, it's the end of the world, your card loses value or whatever it is. But I think the main argument between some people is that they find that the fact that the difference is so subtle that it doesn't affect the value as much. So for example, like Fate Zero, I really don't think at the moment anyone really cares about the fact that whether it's an original print or, you know, a newer print, and the prices aren't really that high on these cards. But if collectors are really going to say like, oh, you know what, this ruins the value, if you really want to look closer on it, when the reprints come out for Overlord, it might be a good example as to just seeing the difference between them, as well as when Attack on Titan comes out. I guess when people get a hold of the cards, they could look closely to see if there's any foiling differences on them, kind of like these Fate cards. But yeah, I wanted to talk about this topic and adding it to the discussion because I wanted people to just see that reprints aren't something that's new. It's happened before, right? And when we look at Attack on Titans and how there's gold signatures and people are freaking out over the fact that, oh no, it's not going to have silver signatures like Overlord, you just have to be aware that, well, for me personally, I don't honestly feel like there's a difference between gold and silver signatures. For the most part, I feel like people want to just collect the actual card art itself. But by adding this to the conversation that the foiling could be different and there are differentiations between it, then, you could see a difference once the sets come out and people actually get these cards on hand and see like, hey, you know what? There is an actual foiling difference that you could be able to tell the difference between the original print and the new print. No matter, in this case, it might be a little bit hard to see unless you have them side by side. And I bring up this topic because I understand from a collector standpoint why some people are upset about the fact that there is a reprint where everything's exactly the same. But there's one thing that I do want to mention when it comes to this, and I kind of touched upon this on my previous video about why there is a dark side to collecting card games and how a lot of people are not financially established when they consider investing in card games. And what I mean by financially established is that you're not, putting all your money into card games. You're financially established when you have a certain amount of money that's saved up for emergencies or just, saved up for your future. I'm not going to put like a certain amount, because the amount of money that you need depends on where you live, your age. You can't just say like, oh, you need $500,000 or $1 million saved up, which, just to note down, just having $1 million in today's world, including like inflation, is not enough money for you to retire on. So just be aware of that. What I mean by financially established is that you have money saved up in your retirement plan. You have all your stuff together. Like, you know that you have monthly payments on your mortgage. You have monthly payments on your car. So if you're someone that's looking to put a lot of a portion of your money into card games and investing in it, you have to think twice, because if you have monthly payments that you're barely struggling to pay every month and you're living almost paycheck to paycheck with no money left over, you're not financially established. And the fact that you're putting a huge portion of your money that you can't even afford to begin with into card games is pretty much gambling. That's pretty much gambling. You're not investing. You're gambling your money on something that is very, very fickle. Collectibles are very, very fickle market that if you're not financially established, you are better off putting your money elsewhere. So by knowing this, you realize that the most vocal people in the community talking about how they're very mad about how there's a reprint and how all the stuff that they bought is, losing value. And you see like stacks of these Attack on Titan boxes or like all these SPs that they collected turns out, are getting reprinted and they're losing a huge chunk of their value. The reason why a lot of these people are mad is because they're not financially established and they had no business in pretty much investing a good portion of their money when they couldn't afford to do so. And again, the flip side of it is, you could have made a lot of money and it turns out it was a big investment. Congratulations, right? But that's like saying that you spent all your life savings on buying a lottery ticket, and if you won the lottery, congratulations. But if you didn't, then you lose everything. And again, it's like gambling pretty much. Whereas opposed to if you do traditional investments or you save your money or whatever it is, you know that you can always cash out whenever you want and it's not as volatile, right? Whereas when you're investing all your money in card games and you can't afford to lose the money, if the rug gets pulled from under you and it bottoms out and whatever you bought for $1,000 is only worth like $10 because no one else is willing to buy it, then no one's going to help you and no one's going to feel bad for you. So again, just remember, as I talked about in my previous video, that the demographic of people who collect in these collectibles and card games are typically between the ages of 18 at the youngest up to around 35. And these are the people like us that are nostalgic for these certain things, right? And remember, compared to, I know that there's like, sealed products over time, typically they go up in value, but that's because these things happen when our generation, our age group was young, so we're nostalgic for it, so we're willing to pay these amounts, right? But then if people are going to say like, no one has a crystal ball, and you're going to say 30 years from now, people our generation is getting older, will the generation that's younger than us right now, like these kids that like Peppa Pig or Dora the Explorer, or I don't know, even know what these kids like nowadays, they have all these fads where will they be as into these things as we are? Will they be willing to spend the money to buy some of these things off of you? Do you think that this broccoli haired kid that's like 10 years old right now that loves watching Peppa Pig like 24 hours a day are gonna be like, oh man, I really want this Albedo card that was like $10,000-$15,000 and this old guy's trying to sell it for like $200,000? Will that really happen though? That's why I say that this is a gamble, right? And you have to be very, very careful about it, especially if you're not financially established, you have these monthly obligations, and your life is just, your money is better put elsewhere, in my opinion. And when you want advice, don't listen to these 20-year-olds, online telling you to invest in these card games and collectibles. Just realize that you should probably speak to an actual financial advisor so that, they could recommend what you could do. Of course, everyone could say like, oh, you know what? The stock market is also volatile as well too, and you could invest and lose all your money. That's true, depending on, what you invest in. But typically when you speak to an actual financial advisor, someone who's actually licensed and has to follow all these laws because there's repercussions, right? When we're financially advising to people, we don't just say, hey, you know what? So and so, you should invest in this. You should buy, I don't know, like all stocks in Google or Amazon. Because if a financial advisor tells everyone to buy the same thing, then they're not financially advising and they're actually liable for damages if they're making the same recommendations for everyone. And you could lose your license for that. Whereas opposed to just some random schmuck online telling you to invest in a card game, there's no repercussions because they don't care. If you lost all your money the next day, it's not like you could sue them, right? But if you're speaking to actually licensed financial advisors and individuals, they're required by law, and there's regulations where there's something called suitability, which I won't go into depth with. Is pretty much just saying that every client that I talk to, if you ask me for advice, I have to recommend something that's suitable to you, and I have to actually submit paperwork to show that I took into consideration that you have these things, like, oh, you have kids, you have monthly payments, you have a mortgage. So I'm not going to recommend something that's super volatile, and it's not a one-size-fits-all thing. So just be aware about that, okay? Again, I know I'm diving a little bit into like more on the financial side, but I just want you to realize that the fact that being financially established is more important than listening to some of these random schmucks telling you whatever stonks and whatever these holy grails are. I just find it really, really irresponsible that these people are telling people what to buy pretty much and just shilling for their sales and pumping these up, and the people that are buying into these things sometimes just cannot afford it, and these things kind of trickle down where every dollar you spend could potentially ruin your financial future. But yeah, that's it. I hope you enjoyed watching the video, and I hope you learned something that maybe you didn't know before, as well as just enjoy watching them and just, find them entertaining. To me, I made these videos because I enjoy collecting. I enjoy the hobby in general of just collecting things that I'm personally nostalgic for, as well as, just find them interesting. I have a lot of fun making these videos, so it actually means a lot to me when people comment and tell me that, oh, you know what, they have a lot of fun watching them, they find them funny, or, they find them informative. And I really appreciate everyone that's been subscribing to the channel. I know it might not, in the scope of things, it might not seem like a lot. In the previous description on one of the videos, I said I was pretty excited that we're at 69. And as the time of making this video, I think I'm at like 83 subscribers, so I'm gonna make my next goal probably like 100, and then going from there. It doesn't seem like a lot in the scope of things because a lot of people have like thousands, hundreds, or like millions or whatever it is. But to me, it means a lot because to me, I find it kind of cool that even more than one person even watches these videos, which is kind of surprising if I think about it. But yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I pay attention to all the comments as well as the feedback that people give, whether some people love the videos, they think that, you know, they're great, or people that critique and just tell me, hey, you know what, certain things might be a little bit biased, and that's why I try to shed light on one side of everything. And I appreciate the critique, so I don't mind criticism. So if there's something you don't like, you let me know as well too. If there's things that you do like, let me know as well too. Like, I just recently changed the mic to try to make the audio a little bit better, so if that's good, let me know as well too. But yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and just have a great day, okay? Take care.